This is Derek, and I am coming back at you with another Wargaming and miniature video. In this video, we are continuing on with our MeG boot camp. And in today's boot camp, we're going to be continuing the chapter 9.4, which is charges and responses. The first half, last video we did was charges. In this video, we're going to be doing counter charges and intercepts and other responses. Okay, let's go ahead and just jump into it and get started. Counter charges and intercepts both occur in turn sequence subphase 2.4. Counter charges and intercepts are moves that get in the way of charges. They never contact anyone and are moved before charges are moved. The chargers run into them, and this is all handled in the turn sequence. Note, all troops are assumed to make a normal countercharge over the last 10 to 20 meters of a charge, and these are built into the factors and do not need to be considered. Countercharge and intercepts never make anybody respond to them, and they may not contact any enemy and are blocked by enemy SUGs in the way. Countercharges and intercepts are shot at if they go within one base width of enemy with missile weapons, with resulting casualties and any slowing effects of fire. A countercharge is a response after all charges have been declared for UGs that themselves are being charged. Okay, countercharges are generally used to either move the combat ahead of your position to protect neighboring troops, or B, wheel towards troops charging you to avoid a flank charge. Remember, the reality we are approximating is simultaneous. So if you charge a flank and have the enemy kept busy frontally, they are stuck. But if not, they may well be wheeling towards you as you approach them. This is what such a countercharge represents. An intercept is a response after all charges have been declared for UGs that are not being charged. Intercepts are used to get in the way of an enemy charge by putting yourself in the way. Okay, so a countercharge is by a unit that is currently being charged. An intercept is a response for units not actually being charged. Okay, to execute a countercharge or intercept, both must start at least one base width from the charging enemy and move into a position in the path of the charge of the charging enemy. So you can't do it if you start within one base. Play a card to make a C4 countercharge or intercept action. Either can be done as a block move, in which case the entire block is deemed to be doing so. A countercharge may wheel up to 90 degrees at the beginning of its move towards those charging it and may not end further away from it. An intercept must be directly ahead. Take any fire by coming within one base width of enemy shooters. Immediately move the UGs to a maximum movement distance, including any effects of terrain and slowing effects, without contacting an enemy and not getting closer than one base width. The universal 1/2 base width shift rule applies to get around friends. So here's some examples. Okay, before we get into the examples, it sounds to me like if I'm countercharging you, I have to be further than one base width apart, okay, and when I move before you charge, but I have to stop before I get too close. So I can't get within one base width of you. So I can pressure you to only charge one base width. That seems pretty cool. That's a countercharge sounds really effective. Okay, let's keep going. Here's an example of a countercharge. So we have some infantry and we have some cavalry. We have some Gaelic warriors. So the cavalry are going to protect the infantry from the Gaelic warriors. The Gaelic warriors are charging directly ahead 3 base widths to the infantry right there. Well, if they charge, they're probably going to hit both, actually. Gauls charge and will hit both the infantry and the cavalry because, they've got enough movement to make contact with both. They are allowed to countercharge as the Gauls are also charging them. So the cavalry get a free 90-degree wheel, so they wheel straight and move. So the measurement is they have a 4 base width move, but they have to stop. It says maximum 3 base width move. So the cavalry will have a maximum of 3 base width move. Okay, so in this example, the Gauls are going to charge the infantry and the cavalry. So their path of the charge is straight ahead as a block right there. Boom. The cavalry declare a countercharge, and to conduct a countercharge, they play the card for C4, the countercharge. Now, C4 says you can move, you get a 90-degree wheel, you cannot start within 1 base width of the enemy, you cannot move closer than 1 base width to the enemy, and your move is -1 base width. Now, with cavalry having a 4 base width move, they can now move 3. So what they'll do is measure from the furthest corner 3 base widths, but remember they cannot get closer than 1 base width to the enemy. So I just push them back a little bit. So that's their countercharge. The Gauls now hit the cavalry, and the infantry have been protected as they are beyond a 1 base width press forward. Okay, so these guys would smack them straight ahead, and as you know, during a charge, if you have exposed files, they can press forward 1 base width, but that's further than 1 base width, so they don't press forward. So that would be the initial contact. Okay, now the second example is an intercept. The cavalry is not being charged, so they can't countercharge. The Gauls charge the infantry, but the cavalry are too far away to be subject to that charge. The cavalry make an intercept with a yellow card and move directly forward into the path of the charge, but do not contact the Gauls. Maximum 3 base width move, and may not go closer than 1 base width to the chargers. So they do their little half base width shift. So now they're getting in the path of the chargers. The Gauls will hit the cavalry, and the infantry has been rescued. And the reason why that is because when they press forward to do their charge, this base is overlapping the cavalry. They don't get a free 1 base push forward. If they did, they would have contacted the infantry. So it's like a countercharge, but it's an intercept when you're not the one being charged. Okay, I got a fairly sizable scenario right here, and I did a little proxy. So we've got 3 Gaelic warrior tugs, and then we've got some foot skirmishers, we've got some horse skirmishers, and then we've got a horse tug. J. Runaway and skirmish responses. Some troops have to make a runaway or skirmish response because they are not strong enough to stand to face a charge. Others are allowed to run away or skirmish, but do not have to do so. These take place before charges are moved at subphase 2.5. 1. SUGs or flexibles in skirmish formation charged by tugs must run away or skirmish unless they are defending barricades or obstacles, they are entirely in difficult terrain, they have already declared a charge, they are in combat. 2. Tugs containing any charging lancers, battle wagons, elephants, devastating charges, or any fully armored or armored horse never run away or skirmish in any circumstance. Wow, charging lancers never run away? Based on runaway and skirmish. Okay. 3. Other cavalry, or chariots are tugs that are missile focused, have a missile weapon, and skilled, experienced, or unskilled may choose to run away or skirmish or choose to stand and receive. So they get the option. So if you got cavalry tugs that are missile focused. And lastly, SUGs or flexibles in skirmish formation charged only by SUGs may run away, skirmish, or stand and receive. Here's an example of a block charge by Gaelic warriors and who responds in which way. Okay, so the block charge is declared, the direction of charge is marked at both ends of the charge. Now, of course, these are not correct. I'm gonna make some arrow tokens that will point, and you could just say, okay, I'm block charging in this direction, or I'm charging in, this direction. SUGs in good going has to run away or skirmish. SUGs entirely in rough going can choose to stand, run away, or skirmish. Cavalry tugs with bows choose to stand and receive, run away, or skirmish. So they get the option. Fully armored tugs have to stand and receive. The player owning the UG decides whether to run away or skirmish before any shooting or movement takes place. So you just basically declare what you're going to do. 1. A runaway response represents taking a quick, fleeting shot and running away as quickly and as far as possible. A skirmish response represents dropping back more gradually while attempting to maximize firing on chargers. So there is a 2 base width reduction in maximum distance moved. The quality of the skirmishers plays a significant role in how far they move. You are very unlikely to get caught if you are superior, making a runaway response, but can easily get caught if you are poor, making a skirmish response, because there's modifiers on the variable move distance. To execute a runaway or skirmish response, for each UG, before making any moves, first roll for any shooting effect using the shooting mechanism. File shoot if their target's path of charge is ahead of them, not behind them, of course, and within 1 base width. Okay, so these guys are going to be charging at 3, so they're good, and they're within 1 base width. They're going to be within 1 base width, Even they are going to be within one base width, but it doesn't matter because they don't shoot. So everybody's going to be within one base width. Once shooting has been done, so basically they shoot first, make a variable movement distance roll, adjust the distance according to the minimum of 0. Okay, you can't have a negative. If making a skirmish response, there's a 2 base width reduction in that distance. It's easy not to move at all with foot skirmishers trying to skirmish, so be careful. And don't forget there is a -1 on the die, not the distance, for Cantabrian. There's a special type of troop that can form a Cantabrian circle. Basically, the unit is running around in a big circle, and anytime the closest horse gets to the enemy, it fires his bow, and then he continues to ride, reloading his bow while the next rider rides up and shoots. So it's kind of like a machine gun fire. All these bows are firing while the people riding behind are reloading. Sorry for the history lesson. All right. Then decide along which of the following 3 directions to move. Directly to your own front, directly to your own rear, or turning, wheeling to align with the marked direction of charge, and turns consume no distance, but wheels are measured as they are for any other move. Move troops to the new position with them ending facing away from the charge if making a runaway, facing towards the charge if you're doing a skirmish. So remember, a runaway, you get your full move, but that means you turn tail and run away from the enemy, right? Where a skirmish would mean that you get that -2 base width, but you're only backing up, right? You're backing up, so you get that minus. If you choose to skirmish when charged in flank or rear, your shooting is deemed ineffective and you roll no shooting dice. But it does at least turn you around to face them. So if you were like this, they charge you and you say, I'm skirmishing, and then you move directly away from the enemy, but you end facing towards them. Both cases are still considered to have done a shooting action and cannot shoot later in the shooting phase, even if it was to your flank. You tried to shoot at them, but did minimal damage. Troops who have made a runaway or skirmish response may only use 3 prompted actions thereafter in that turn's movement phase. Remember, this is all happening during the charge phase of the turn. These all allow some adjustment of position. All are directly forward or directly backwards at a maximum of 2 base width of movement, or turning 180 degrees on the spot. An M2, advance directly ahead action to make a short advance up to 2 base width without wheels. An M9, turn 180 degrees on the spot. This is usually used to turn the UG that did a runaway. An M10, which is turn 100 degrees with a move action and move up to 2 base widths. So you can move and turn or turn and move without any wheels. This is most often used to turn an UG that did a runaway and move back into the shooting range. And all may be block moves if cards allowed. UGs who meet a table edge when doing a runaway or skirmish move are treated as follows. If a side table edge or your opponent's rear edge, turn or wheel to move along the table edge in the direction that best takes you away from the enemy charging you. So you don't run off the table. You like run to the edge and then run down the length of the edge. But remember, that's the side or your opponent's edge. If a SUG reaching your table edge, they are lost and removed from the game. Basically, they know it's free to run home, so that's where they did. If a tug reaches your rear edge, they stop immediately, and the opponent gets cab tests on them, including tugs in skirmish formation. Okay, shooting at chargers. We got some legionaries right here. We got some javelin men there and some javelin men there. Files can shoot at chargers if the path of charge passes within one base width and ahead of them, as shown in the example. Okay, so this is a base width, right? And the path of charge for these legionaries is 3 base widths directly ahead. So the path of charge would be all the way up to there, between there and there. This is defined before shooting, as the UGs being charged have already declared their response. Shooters can also fire at enemy countercharging or intercepting that have come within the 1 base width. So in this example, this is the path of the charge. It comes within 1 base width of this file, obviously, but it also comes within 1 base width of this file, because 1 base width of this file is there. So the adjacent file, basically. So when these guys charge, this file's going to shoot, this file's going to shoot, and because they cross here, this file's going to fire and this file's going to fire. Also, if they were to stop for whatever reason, right there, this is still within 1 base width of that file. So he's going to get all 4 dice. The path of charge does not change, so a file that is revealed by the responder moving does not shoot unless the path of charge comes within 1 base width. So in MeG, revealed shooters do not fire. If you put foot skirmishers in front of a tug of bowmen and they are charged, then the skirmishers will shoot, but the tug behind will not. So, like, let's say I had longbowmen up front and men-at-arms in the back, and you charge me and my response is to skirmish. I shoot and fall back. Now these men-at-arms, let's say it's another row of longbowmen, let's do it that way, they don't get to shoot. Because if you're revealed, you do not fire. In some circumstances, the shooting will stop a charger before it reaches the 1 base width distance used for deciding who fires. Do not go back to reduce the reroll shooting effects for this. It is all bundled into the mechanism for the right overall effect. Imagine them falling back in a bit of chaos. Okay, so let me try to interpret this for you. So let's say these guys are up here. They've declared a charge through this unit. We all know that these guys are going to get to shoot and these guys are going to get to shoot. Let's say they all shoot and they cause a -2 movement. That's the slowing effect. With a -2 movement, they would only have a 1 base width move, and let's say that their one base width would cause them to stop right short of contact, right? Okay. Even if they don't go inside this, they're still within 1 base width, but they're not within 1 base width, right? See that? They would shoot into this area, and they're not within 1 base width. But that's okay. You've already rolled this die for damage. They've already taken the effect. Just imagine, what they're saying is just imagine they did get within 1 base width, they took a couple of hits, and they fell back a little bit in the chaos. So don't go back and try to figure out which dice actually hit him and which didn't. That'll just slow the game down. Moving chargers. Once all counter charges, intercepts, runaways, skirmish responses have all been completed, the active player chooses their first charge move, then the inactive, and so on until all charges are moved. In some circumstances, this sequence is important. For example, if being charged in the rear while charging yourself, you may move out of charge reach before they get to move their UG. You have outrun them. Once contact has been first made by an UG, and any files must press forward up to 1 base width from the line of first contact if they can contact an enemy directly ahead. When the charging UG is hit in the flank or rear, any files contacted to flank or rear are stopped by being contacted and do not move. The other files may still press forward to contact any enemy within 1 base width. Before we go on, this is just a quick example with this right here. Let's say he declared a charge on him, and he declared a charge on him. Okay, and this guy gets the opportunity to charge first. And let's say, and because he's not behind, he has to he's considered contacting him in the front. Let's say he wheels and makes contact like so. Now it's his time to charge. He has to press forward the 1 base width with the files that are not contacted to his original destination, or what have you. Boom. So that would be a legal example. They charge. Changes of direction are allowed only when the target of a charge has changed position due to a runaway, skirmish, intercept, or countercharge. The change of direction must be in an attempt to catch them and may not exceed the limit of 90-degree wheel at the beginning of a charge. Files claiming flank or rear bonuses should be agreed at the time they are moved, as the condition that applies to the time determines their validity. What they're saying there is, you don't determine if you're in the flank when you declare the charge. You determine if you're in the flank when you move the charge. Now, as an example, let's put these guys back. Let's put these guys back. So remember, this guy declared a charge on him. He declares a charge on him. But if he goes first and he charges directly ahead, or worse, wheels and charges. But remember, the player that's controlling this knows that he declared a charge on him, plus there's probably a marker on the table saying, hey, I'm charging in this direction, so he probably wouldn't do what I just did. But if for some reason he decided to do that, now this file, well actually both files, are completely in the rear of this when they move, so they would be getting the flank bonus. If he went straight, this is how I set this up, straight across, this guy would not get the flank bonus, but this guy would. So they would go in, remember at the time of the movement, they get it, they don't get it. So they would be considered fighting to the front, and they would be considered fighting to the rear, or the flank. Flank and rear is the same. But when I declared the charge, I was in this front. Engaging in melee when already in contact. Normal UGs may only create a new contact or combat by charging or pursuing into the enemy, or by being hit by such enemy. We cover the other means here, even though the moves will be in the movement phase. Troops who are already touching an enemy UG but are currently not fighting it are deemed too close and already too involved to charge. Instead, they can create a melee contact in the movement phase. Okay, so if you find yourself in contact with the enemy, but you never charged them, you can't now charge them, but you can just join the melee. This is how you can do it. Where an UG is in front corner only contact with the enemy front corner, it may align one base width in movement to create a single base width frontal melee combat. So basically, he just scooches them over. Single base width. It may make a wheel as a whole into side combat with the enemy if it can both reach and has room to do so. Okay, here's an example. We've got these Romans that have pressed past these Gauls, but they are still base-to-base contact right there. These Romans can turn 90 degrees as an entire UG to create a combat. So they do the 90-degree turn. They were 2 base deep, so now they're 2 base front. And they say this is the file that's fighting, and this is a supporting file to the flank. This file will fight on melee combat as normal with a +2 for flank if the Gaelic bases do not turn to face. I thought flank and rear was +4. Well, maybe that's only in the charge. We're not in combat, so I can't really tell. The Gauls here could do an MF2 move to turn bases to face the enemy. That's the first example. The next example shows them only moderately corner to corner right there. The Romans could align to the, well, it says left, but it's the right of the legion, left of the Gauls, doing an MF1. So basically you could expand the line one like that and engage. That's an option. Or they may wheel to create a melee combat on the flank. So, which is probably the way I would do it. They would wheel around. And yeah, that's probably the way I would do it. Now it says these files will both fight as melee combat as normal with a +2 for flank if the Gaul bases do not turn to face. So yeah, you got a couple of other different options right there. All right, well that was charge and charge responses in 2 videos. I appreciate you coming and checking these out. There are more to come. In the next video, we're actually going to go into the mechanics of combat. 9.5 is combat. How to fight, how to cause casualties, how to remove bases, etc. I hope you enjoy this. Hope you're learning something from it. I know I am. I know I've got tokens I need to create. And I will see you in the next video.